Hey, I'm Kylie, former NICU travel nurse and founder of Passports and Preemies, and you're listening to Clocked Out, Life Beyond the Bedside. This podcast is for nurses who are ready to ask, what else is out there for me? Each week, we dive into what it means to thrive as a nurse beyond the hospital walls through conversations about burnout, alternative careers, travel, financial freedom, and wellness. Whether you're deep in burnout or just craving more freedom, you're in the right place. It's time to redefine what life after clocking out really looks like. Hi, guys. Today's guest is someone kind, endearing, and open to sharing about her experiences as an American working as a nurse in Norway. Frida is a nurse, storyteller, and content creator who has spent the last 4 years working in Norway. From hospital shifts to home care to finding her spark again in a countryside nursing home, Frida has been incredibly open about her experience with burnout and how stepping away physically and emotionally from her hospital job led her to healing. Now, Frida is navigating the complex process of transferring her Norwegian license to practice in the United States, all while continuing to create content that inspires and connects nurses around the world. In this episode, Frida and I talk about her journey in Norway, the realities of working in a different healthcare system, what burnout taught her, how much she gets paid as a nurse in Norway, and why she's excited to come back to the United States. So let's get into it. Hi, Frida. Can you please introduce yourself to listeners and share a little bit about your nursing background?
Okay, so hi, my name is Frida. I am 28 years old and I'm an American living in Norway. And I got my Norwegian nursing license here and I've worked in Norway as a nurse for 4 years.
I am so excited to chat with you because I came across you on TikTok a little while ago and I've been watching your videos. And I think that it's so interesting that you are working as a nurse in Norway. And I think that the audience is really going to like to hear from you and learn from you. And I think I'm curious about getting into your journey in Norway. So, are you Norwegian or how did you move from the United States to Norway?
Okay, first, thank you so much for following along on me on TikTok and finding me on there. So I grew up in a bicultural family in the States. My dad is Norwegian and my mom is American. So it was always a dream of wanting to move to Norway. So when I was 18, I moved to Norway and that's when I went to the Book High School, which I'll explain in a little bit. But I went to a Book High School here in Norway as like a gap year program. And then after that, I liked living in Norway so much that I just wanted to keep on living here. So now 10 years later, 10 years later, because I moved here right when I turned 19 and now I'm 28. So 9 years later, still living in Norway.
What did you like about Norway when you were visiting?
I would always come and visit here during the summers. And I don't know what really drew me to move to Norway was the fact that I could get a college education for free. The public healthcare system is free. It was just like a different values and welfare system than we have in the States. So that's something that drew me here. Also, it's beautiful here. And I just always grew up with that thought of what would my life been like if I'd grown up in Norway instead of growing up in the States, which I could have because my dad was Norwegian.
And did you speak Norwegian before you moved, or did you learn it once you moved to Norway?
Growing up, I did not learn Norwegian. I didn't start speaking until I was 3 or something. So we ended up switching to only English in our household because we used to try to speak with Norwegian and English in the household. So we switched to just English. So I didn't learn. That was like also a huge goal of mine was to be able to learn Norwegian. So I didn't speak it before.
Because I hear that Norwegian is like such a hard language. And so I'm curious if did that take you like forever or is it just kind of a natural evolution?
So I think like that has a reputation. A lot of people say that Norwegian is hard, but I really think it depends on what your base language is. So coming from the States and having English, I think it's easier for me to learn Norwegian than if my base language was Arabic, for example, because like it's completely different. But it was hard learning Norwegian. It was an adjustment, but I was extremely motivated to learn Norwegian. And I actually knew a little bit of Danish since I had had an exchange year in Denmark my junior year of high school, which is like kind of similar. It's not the same, but it's a little similar. So I just tried with that. Since I was in school with people that were only Norwegian, I just really forced myself to speak it. I will say as well that there are so many different dialects in Norway, and some are harder than others. And that was also a hard adjustment to learn.
Yeah. And then you mentioned that you went to a folk high school when you moved to Norway. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes. So a folk high school is kind of like a school where you can go a year after you're done with high school, kind of like a combination of a gap school year program, but not completely a school where you have tests and exams and stuff. It's kind of like a focus on learning outside of the classroom. A little confusing to explain, but we have lots of different schools in Norway with that. So my specific class that I went to, we focused a lot on sustainability and different cultures and traveling. So I ended up visiting 5 different countries during that period with my folk high school. But for me, it was a huge adjustment for learning like the Norwegian culture, learning Norwegian, just figuring out how it actually was to live in Norway. Because yeah, I visited Norway a lot growing up, but I'd never actually lived here and been so immersed in the culture.
I think it's really cool that they have different focuses and focusing on sustainability and travel. And I think that that's something that maybe lacks in the United States. Like, I'm living in France now, and just how my husband, the things he was taught in school and what they focus on, like being a good steward of the world, I think is lacking a little bit in the United States. So I think that's super, super interesting that that's one of the focuses there in Norway. And I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to jump into nursing. That's the reason that we're here.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you graduated high school in the United States. At 18 years old, you moved to Norway. You did 1 year of folk high school, and then you went to nursing school. What did that look like?
Okay. Yes. So I did my year at the folk high school, which is a little outside of Bergen. And then I was like, okay, I'm not ready to leave Norway yet. So I want to be able to do higher education here in Norway. But to do higher education, my education in the States wasn't completely equal that with education here to apply for higher education. So then I had a year here in Stavanger, which is where I live now, of taking up different classes that I had to do, taking Norwegian. I had to test a Norwegian proficiency exam. And in that meantime, I started working at a nursing home. And I never really saw myself going into healthcare, even though I had a family with lots of nurses. I just saw myself going into journalism or economics, something completely different. But I loved working at the nursing home so much, and I wanted to like understand why we do these different things. Last minute, I ended up changing my order of what I wanted to go into from journalism, economics, and business to nursing. So the next year, I started in nursing school, and here in Norway, it's actually a 3 year program with nursing instead of 4 years in the States.
Okay.
So,
And
yeah,
once you graduated from nursing school, what was your first nursing job?
I had my job as a nursing student, whereas the same nursing
Mhm.
home where I worked at before I started nursing school, I worked there for 2 of my years in nursing school. And then my last year of nursing school, I transferred over to the hospital because I knew that's where I wanted to work when I was done with my nursing education. And that's my first job where I ended up working. My first job was working on a one medical unit because in Norway, we don't divide up medical and I think in the States that you guys call it med surge.
Yeah.
Like medical and surgical. But in Norway,
Oh,
like
okay.
medical, surgical units.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
ended up working on the one unit. Yeah.
In Norway, are you allowed to choose the unit you go into, or are you placed? Because I was doing some volunteer work in North Macedonia, which is a different country, but the nurses there aren't allowed to choose where they want to work. They're just placed where they're needed when they graduate.
Interesting. That's very different. In Norway, we're able to apply into the units that we want to work on. But getting like
Okay.
a full time position on that unit is usually harder.
Okay. Okay. I've seen a lot of your videos talking about working in the hospital and that, caused a lot of burnout and stress for you. And I do want to discuss that next. But can you tell us after the hospital what your next nursing jobs were? Because I know you've kind of been all over the place.
Yeah, I've been in a lot of different fields. Nursing has been a journey. I worked on the lung unit, and then I worked on the kidney unit, I worked on the gastro unit, I worked on the infectious disease unit. And these units I kind of worked on for like a year. And then I ended up working as a home healthcare nurse in Stavanger, the city where I lived, for 6 months. And then I ended up working at a nursing home and home healthcare facility since it's more remote on the countryside in Norway. I ended up working there for 2 years. It will be this fall.
So you've done hospital, you've done home care, and now you're doing nursing home in the countryside. And just because like I have seen your videos, so you're living in the city and you travel to go to the countryside. Can you paint a picture of that for us? Because I feel like I don't know that we have anything similar to that in the United States.
Yeah, so the countryside, it's just 50 minutes from where I live. And since I work
Okay,
12-hour shifts, I stack all my shifts. I work 4 12s in a row. So when I'm working, I just live out on the countryside. And then I have family nearby the nursing home. So I spend the night there.
totally. I want to discuss some of the biggest differences in nursing culture between Norway and the US. So you mentioned you're doing 4 12-hour shifts. Is that normal there?
No, it's not normal.
Okay. Okay. What's the normal working hours there?
Okay, so at the hospital, the most normal with is 3 schedule rotations. So you work days that are 8 hours, evening shifts that are 8 hours, and night shifts. That's 10 hours. That's what's most common. And that's one of the things that really got me out to the countryside where I work now is because I wanted to do 12-hour shifts.
Wait, you do 3 8-hour shifts like a week, or how many days do you get off then?
Yeah, so right, because that sounded kind of confusing. So we have a rotating schedule that most nurses at the hospital work days, evenings, and nights.
Okay. And then how many hours a week are nurses required to work?
35.5 hours is full time working as a nurse.
So you kind of do 3 day shifts and then 1 or 2 evening shifts during the same week.
Yeah, your shift kind of equals out. That is different from week to week of what you work. And if you have the night shift weekend, then maybe it's a little different too.
Okay. Yeah. I can definitely see why you struggled in that because you don't really, it feels like you wouldn't necessarily get a break when your body is flipping that often. But I am glad to hear that you're only working 35.5 hours because I was worried that you were going to tell me that you were required to work 48 hours a week.
Oh my gosh. No, that would be a lot. But no, the evening and day shift is what people struggle the most with because you get done at 10 p.m. and then you have to be back at work at 7 a.m. Maybe you have to go
Yeah.
overtime a little bit on the evening shift. So you get home at like 11. Then you have to wind down a little. You've had a super busy shift. You don't fall asleep until 1 or 2. And you're up again at
Yeah.
4. Like you only get 4 hours of sleep. So they are
Yeah.
like the
That's hard.
hardest ones. And then, yeah.
Talk to me about your workload. How many patients do you normally take care of on a shift? When you were working in the hospital, I would assume that your home care and that is a little bit different. But when you were
Yeah.
working in the hospital,
So at the hospital, it's a little different from unit to unit, but mostly on day shifts, you usually have between 4 to 6 patients. Evening shift, you can have anything between 8 to 13 patients. Night shift, you can have anything between 14 to 16 patients.
that feels like
And
a lot. I worked in the NICU, so anything over 3 feels like a lot, but I have a feeling a lot of people will say that's a lot of patients. I want to know what nursing autonomy is like there because I think in the US, nurses do have a lot of autonomy to kind of make decisions that are best for the patient, like within the scope of practice. I'm living in France. I do not work as a nurse here, but I know that in France, nurses have very, very, very little say and control about how their patients are cared for. And they really just follow doctor's orders. And I'm curious, like in Norway, what's it like?
so I also think that this is one of the big differences between Norway and the States is I feel like in the States you're kind of a little bit more independently with making these different decisions and stuff. In Norway, for example, during nursing school, we don't learn how to listen to lung sounds or heart sounds, which kind of like inhibits a
Yes.
lot of our practice because that gives us so much valuable information about our patient. We also don't learn how to read ECGs, and that's also very valuable things that you are able to use with your patients. So I feel like it's maybe not to the extent that it is in France, but then I feel like we have a little bit more leeway and it really depends on like your doctor relationship with the provider that you're speaking with.
Do you feel like the doctors, not every doctor, everyone's different, but do you feel like overall that they maybe don't listen to nurses often? Like they don't respect the nurse's opinion?
I feel like at the hospital, they listen to us more than the experience that I've had at the nursing home I worked at, for example. I feel like we're trusted a lot less, which is kind of hurtful, honestly, because we follow, especially at the nursing home and home healthcare, we know those patients really well. Like you create such a good relationship with your patients. So I feel like they listen a lot less there. I've had that experience. But at the hospital, I feel like we were listened a lot more to, like, what we evaluate of our patients.
I think that's interesting that you said you don't learn how to listen to breath sounds and stuff because in North Macedonia, it was the same. So actually there, the nursing students start school when they're 14 years old, nursing school, and they graduate when they're 18 and they go straight into nursing at 18, which is kind of wild. But they don't have a stethoscope. Like that's just what the doctor does. It's really like they're there to give medications, to draw the labs, to call for help. So yeah, I get a little bit of what you're talking about.
I find that really interesting because I feel like moving forward in our healthcare system, we need to be using our knowledge really wisely. And for our providers and doctors, for example, if nurses learn how to, listen to breath sounds, listen to the lungs, read ECGs, that can be such vital information that our providers don't have to be doing that. They can be focusing more on their other jobs. So I find that really interesting. And in Norway
Mhm.
as well, at the hospital, I had a big responsibility of being a part of daily duties, finding food for my patients, finding breakfast, finding lunch for them. And in the meantime, I'm also have medications, antibiotics, doctor orders, all of that stuff. So you just have such a big scope of everything that you're supposed to be doing. So that is something I'm really passionate about too, is in the future of how we're using our knowledge so that everybody can use their knowledge to their best capacity for our patient.
I saw a video that okay, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but you did allude to in the United States when you were shadowing a nurse, you really liked that all of the equipment was available and in the patient room. Because of my experience volunteering, I understand that when those things that seem so simple are not available to you when you need them, it literally makes your shift so much more exhausting. Is that the case in Norway? Just that maybe, there was less equipment, or would you agree with that? Or,
Oh, yes, 100% agree. Every task could take so much longer because blood pressure equipment. Oh, where's that in the hallway?
Mhm.
Oh, let's use that. Okay, we have to go find everywhere for this. Whereas in the States, in every single room, there was blood pressure equipment. I mean, all of that stuff. And you think of infectious control and all of that. Just having like our equipment easily there to use, even just having like, an IV flush. You don't have to be going chasing down the hallway to find one or yeah, that makes a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm curious, in Norway as a nurse, what is your vacation time like? And I have a feeling I'm going to be shocked, and I hope I am. So tell us what your vacation is.
So I get an extra vacation because I work by 12-hour shifts, but that's like not vacation because it's what I worked in. So in Norway, I have 5 weeks of vacation every year. That isn't paid vacation, but I have 5 weeks of vacation. And I'm allowed to take like 3 to 4 weeks in a row if I want to during summer. And if you're over 60, you get an extra week.
But you don't get paid.
This is where it's kind of confusing. And if you ask any Norwegian, most people can't really explain it because it's kind of confusing. So in the month of June, we don't get our normal paycheck, but we get something that's called vacation money, feriepenger in Norwegian. And this is a little sum that's taken from our paycheck every month. And then we get this lump of money in June. And usually it's higher than our normal paycheck as well. So it's kind of like a mini savings account for us. So when we go on vacation then, because we don't get paid. It's confusing.
But do you like that you get this sum of money in June? It's like a nice surprise, I guess.
Yeah, it's kind of like a mini savings account for you throughout the year.
Could you share with us what your salary is in Norway?
Yes. I just need to say as well that the Norwegian kroner to the US dollar is absolutely terrible right now. Our currency rate is so bad. For right now, I make 600,000 Norwegian kroner per year, which is before like all of the extra stuff that you get, which is around 60,000 US dollars a year. But I also want to mention that I make more money as a nurse on the countryside than I did as my job at the hospital. And if I were working at the hospital, I'd probably be making 530,000 Norwegian kroner, which is around $52,000 a year. Because in Norway, we do yearly pay rates. So it's kind of hard for me to come with how much we make each hour. I would have to look that up. That is before taxes. But I think my hourly rate is maybe around $30. Don't quote me 100% on that, but I think it's around $30. I pay about 32% of taxes. So that's taken out of my paycheck every month. And then if I pay too much money in taxes, then I'll get money back. Or you'll have to pay in money if you don't pay enough of your taxes. And I'm pretty sure it's like 30 to 40%. I think I have 32% that's taken out of my paycheck every month. So then our taxes and stuff, since we have such high taxes, that goes to, for example, our free healthcare system, free education. So everybody benefits from having our higher taxes. Our whole population benefits from having it. Even if you have a lot of money, at some point in your life, you're going to benefit from having the higher taxes.
So I think that one conversation that's been happening often in the United States is nurses not getting paid enough. And of course, I think every nurse deserves to be paid more. But when you talk to nurses abroad, it's evident that nurses in the US make quite a bit more than any other nurse around the world. And with your salary and your tax rate at the end of the month or at the end of the year, do you feel like with all of the benefits that you get in Norway, the free healthcare, the good social systems, do you feel like you have enough money to live a fun, happy life? Or do you feel like the pay is not good enough for that?
I think it's a little crazy when it's such an important job. And then, especially with that, we need to recruit more nurses. We need more nurses. We're losing so many nurses. So that is something that I'm passionate about.
I want to pivot a little bit because you're very, very open about going through burnout when you were working in the hospital setting. What made you realize that you were burned out? And how did you decide, okay, it's time to quit and really put myself first?
Yeah. So for me, I went through burnout when I was 25 and I was working at the hospital. And I think that it was just pushing myself for so hard for so long because I felt my first year as a nurse was hard. And that's what everyone said. Being a new grad is really hard. And I was just waiting for that year mark of when things were going to get better. But for me, it just never got better. And then I started having physical and mental issues from it of being tired outside of work, losing my appetite, just feeling completely burnout everywhere. And I can't keep pushing myself anymore. I pushed myself so hard where I was like, I think I'm just going to fall over one day. So I'm just waiting for the moment of now she's going to topple over, something like this. I just kept on pushing myself to the point where I'm like, I can't do this anymore.
I know that you went through something called EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Can you tell us what that is?
Yes. So I went to EMDR treatment, which was extremely helpful for me with processing through what had happened from the hospital, especially one specific traumatic incident, which is when I would think about the incident. I would cry about it and have such strong emotions, and it would be extremely disturbing for me to think about it. And there was definitely some negative thoughts about myself in that situation. And through going to a therapist who was specialized in EMDR, she helped me work through these memories and reprocess it in my body so that now I can think about that super traumatic incident without having strong emotions about it and feeling more distance to experience. If that makes sense, it's kind of confusing with explaining EMDR, but it's something that was completely new to me. It's extremely helpful.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I've never heard about EMDR until I saw you talking about it. And so I was happy that you shined a light on it and just, sharing another resource for other nurses that feel burned out.
Yeah, it was extremely helpful. I swear by if it wasn't for my therapist and the treatment that I got, I would not be a nurse today without it. It was so helpful.
I think that brings us to today. So you were 18 years old, you left the United States, you moved to Norway, you did your, let's say, your gap year. You decided, oh, I want to stay in Norway. I love it. You went to nursing school, you worked in the hospital, you've worked home health, you work in the countryside. And now you are in the process of going back to the United States. So tell us what it's like to switch your Norwegian nursing license to a United States nursing license.
Yes. So this has been another journey that has been going on since summer 2022, starting with setting all of our documentation into CGFNS, which is evaluation for international education. So then they evaluate my information, and I was lacking pediatric and OB. I applied to the Minnesota Board of Nursing, and then they started I needed to have that in my education, but they wouldn't have cleared out with finding a school or anything for how to fulfill these requirements, just that I needed to fulfill it. So I went back to the States last fall to fill these requirements. And I went back to nursing school, back as a nursing student. And that's where I had clinicals in OB and PEDS. And then I had to take an English exam, even though my first language is English. I had to take the English exam, and luckily that came right in time. And then I was able to take the NCLEX 2 days before I left the country to go back to Norway. And I passed the NCLEX in 96 questions, I believe it was.
Well, I am so proud of you, but I have to tell you, so the English test, I worked as a nurse in Saudi Arabia. And obviously, like, I'm American and Saudi, they speak Arabic. And I also had to take an English test in order to get my nursing license there, which I always thought was like really funny.
I'm so happy to hear that I'm not the only one.
Okay, I know that besides how much you get paid, the second most asked question is going to be, can a United States nurse move to Norway to work as a nurse without knowing the language?
This is one of the questions that I get all the time as well. Everyone like comments on my TikTok videos. I want to leave work in Norway as a nurse. I want to leave the States. I'm pretty sure that you do have to learn the language because our patients speak Norwegian. My colleagues speak Norwegian. The data system, everything is in Norwegian because Norwegian is the language here. But I don't want to show people's dreams about moving to Norway because there are maybe different facilities where you can pursue nursing with being able to speak English. But I will say that you probably will have to jump through the same hoops that I did to get your education accepted here. But I don't want to kill anyone's dreams because if you really want to work hard for it, you can do it.
Yeah, I actually love that you say that because it's true. Like, you can't just say no because if there's a will, there's a way. But it sounds like it would just be really freaking hard and time consuming. But like, again, if that's like what somebody's like major dream is, then like, of course they should pursue it. But it sounds like learning Norwegian, it would just be a little bit more challenging.
And I think they may be surprised with how the healthcare system is here compared to working as a nurse in the States. And I think that American nurses offer such a valuable knowledge, scope of skill, all of this, not disregarding Norwegian nurses at all. But I think that American nurses have a lot to offer. So we'd love to have more American nurses here in Norway too.
I 100% agree with that. You know, when you were doing your studies in America recently and you were doing your clinical rotations, what was something that surprised you?
Oh, there was really like so many things. I feel like all of our assessments of our patients were so thorough. Like doing a head to toe at the beginning of your shifts, you don't have that in Norway. However, when I start my evening shift with 10 patients, I'm doing a head to toe on all my patients. Like, we just don't have the time. And also, a big difference was with charting. We also have that inherent law that is important to chart, and that's something that's really important to me. But it's just not practiced as the same way in the state. And that's also due to different legal reasoning.
Yeah, because you probably can't just sue anybody and everybody in Norway like you can in the United States. You know, I've asked you about, like, I know you're going back to America, but I don't know why. Why have you decided now is the time to go from Norway back to the United States?
The reason why I want to go and practice nursing mostly is for like career reasons that I want to move back to the States because I see more potential in my career in the States, and it is motivating. I mean, American nurses make a lot more money than Norwegian nurses do, of course, depending on what state you live in. But that's a big reason. Nursing career, nursing options, and also just living in my hometown again. It was really nice living in Minnesota last fall and being able to be, my mom lives there, first I know whole family lives there. And the small things of being able to go to my grandma's 90th birthday party, because that's something that I'm able to do when I live in Norway. So just living at home again with my culture, there are things about American culture that I really miss.
What do you miss about American culture?
Okay, so I really miss the openness with Americans. You can just like chit chat with people in the stores. And I am a person that really kind of blossoms in that. I like the little chit chat in grocery stores. That's one thing that I miss. I miss speaking English. I feel like I express myself differently in English. And I guess, yeah, just like the openness with people is what I miss most. And friendly. People are really friendly in the States to a different degree than they are in Norway, and just being able to be yourself in a different way than in Norway.
Yeah, I think that's the same sentiment here in France. It's like shocking to me sometimes that things are closed on Sundays. It's a lot harder to get things done and accomplished. And then, of course, not a lot of people are friendly, which I have my days where I like that. And then I have my days where it really depresses me. And I'm like, why doesn't anybody want to be my friend?
Yeah.
I think as we wrap up, I'm curious what words of wisdom you have for a nurse who is listening right now that might be feeling burnt out and stuck in their career.
Yeah, and this is a really good question. And I guess my advice would be is that there are so many different options out there in nursing to also speak more with like our managers and stuff and kind of have more expectations for our workplace of what kind of systems they have in place for us. And this is something that now today in our hospital, I would do a lot better job of advocating for myself and letting them know. And that's something that I've done in future workplaces. That's something that I've learned through being a nurse, learn to go through these experiences, but also that like we're at our workplace so much. So that's important to really like our job and to like what we're doing and feel like we're being supported and that we have a okay day where we're able to eat and go to the bathroom during our day and feel like we're able to give decent care to our patients. Because I know those are like huge things that really started to take on me when I went through my burnout was just going home every day feeling like I run all day. So I guess I would say to just follow your heart in that situation and to really prioritize yourself because we learned so much to prioritize other people. There's so many different options. It's interesting.
100%. And that's a good segue into I ask every guest this question. What do you hope that your life looks like in 5 years?
I really hope that I'm doing something that I'm passionate about, whether it's nursing, social media, just that I'm passionate about it and I feel good in my job that I'm going to, that I leave work feeling fulfilled. And I guess that's like my small goal.
Okay. What is your very favorite place in Norway? If I'm coming to visit, if somebody's coming to visit, where should we go?
And maybe a little biased, but I really do love my city of Stavanger. We have the Culprit Rock here, which is this gorgeous rock that you join. And I just think the mixture that we have between being on the countryside and the nature and also our city is super cute. And it's not as big. I really love Oslo as well, but it's often the feels kind of overwhelming and huge. Whereas in Stavanger, it's like small, great roads and it's just really great and cute. And we have the nature to offer and a cute little city to offer as well.
Can you spell what you're saying? Because I'm confused.
Sorry, I don't know what it's SCADADNGR. I said it in like more of a Norwegian way than I did the American way.
I'm looking at it right now and it is stunning. And I don't think I've ever heard of it.
Yeah, it's a hidden gem. Actually, in one of the last movies of Mission Impossible, he's hanging off of a cliff, and you can see the lake where my family lives. We actually have the longest underground tunnel. It's a 10-minute tunnel under the ocean, and that's what I drive underneath to my job.
Well, I love that fact. And I feel like now I need to make it a point to visit.
Yes. So for lots of amazing tips going on my channel.
Tell us where people can find you if they want to follow along and ask you any questions about your nursing journey.
So I post daily on TikTok and Instagram, but I'm also active on Snapchat and long content blogs on YouTube, which I have a few YouTube nursing blogs if you are interested in seeing what my nursing job has been like as a book nurse and at my nursing home now. And my goal is to start being more consistent with these blogs coming up. And I have some travel blogs. I have like my Copenhagen blog, Oslo, if you're going to be traveling to these places. So my goal coming up is going to be posting longer content videos.
It's at Frida.
My at is Frida_IN. And my name, to remember how to spell my name, it's Friday without the Y. So
I love it.
Friday.
And
I'm trying to remember how to spell it. It's kind of a tricky spelling.
yes, I love it. And if you guys want to follow Frida, her handles will all be in the show notes, so you can find her there. And thank you so much for chatting with us today and being open with us.
Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It was a blast.
Thanks so much for tuning in to Clocked Out, Life Beyond the Bedside. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love it if you could take a moment to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a fellow nurse who needs to hear it. For more on thriving beyond the bedside, make sure to follow along on Instagram and check out Passports and Preemies, where we talk travel, wellness, and building a life that works for you.